The definition of a rural settlement depends on the country. In some countries, a rural settlement is any settlement in the areas defined as rural by a governmental office, for example, by the National Census Bureau. This may include even rural towns. In some others, rural settlements traditionally do not include towns. Common types of rural settlements are villages, hamlets and farms. Traditionally, rural settlements were associated with agriculture. In modern times, other types of rural communities have been developed. On completion of this module, you should be able to understand the functions of rural settlements and also understand the patterns of rural settlements. The settlement where the occupation of majority of people relate to the local natural resources are called rural settlement. For example, 1. Settlement of fisheries along a sea coast, 2. Settlement of tribal people in the forest area, and 3. Settlement of farmers along the banks of rivers. Rural settlements are most intimately and directly associated with land. They are controlled by primary activities such as agriculture, animal husbandry, fishing, etc. The establishment size is relatively small. Some factors influencing the location of rural settlements are water supply. Usually, rural settlements are settled near water bodies such as rivers, springs and lakes, where water can be readily obtained. Sometimes the requirement of water drives people to settle in otherwise disadvantaged places such as islands encompassed by swamps or low lying river banks. Most water based wet point settlements have many benefits such as water for cooking, washing and drinking. Rivers and lakes can be used to water farmland. Water bodies also have aquatic living beings like fish which can be grabbed for diet, and transferable rivers and lakes can be used for shipping. Coming to second one, land. People prefer to settle near fertile lands fit for agriculture. In Europe, villages developed up near rolling country evading swampy low lying land, while people in Southeast Asia choose to reside near low lying river valleys and coastal plains befitted for wet rice cultivation. Early immigrants choose plain regions with fertile soils. Coming to the third aspect, that is upland. Upland which is not inclined to flooding was adopted to prevent damage to houses and loss of life. Thus, in low lying river basins, people prefer to settle on terraces and levees which are dry points in tropical countries. People mount their houses on stilts near marshy lands to defend themselves from flood, insects and animal pests. Coming to building material, the availability of building supplies, wood and stone found near settlement is another benefit. Early villages were constructed in forest clearings where wood was abundant. Coming to defense, during the times of political uncertainty, war, the hostility of neighboring groups, villages were established on protective hills and islands. In Nigeria, upstanding inselbergs developed as good defensive sites. In India, most of the fortifications are found on higher grounds or hills. Coming to planned settlements, sites that are not instinctively chosen by villagers themselves, planned settlements are established by governments by giving shelter, water and other infrastructural facilities on acquired lands. The plan of villagization in Ethiopia and the canal communities in Indira Gandhi Canal Command area in India are some of the examples. The people living in the rural areas all over the world are engaged and dependent on various primary occupations such as agriculture, dairying, cattle keeping, fisheries, forestry and mining. Out of these, agriculture is the most important occupation. Consequently, the functions of most of the peoples of rural settlements are generally agricultural. Apart from cultivation of crops and domestication of animals, the rural settlements perform other functions. Its religious place, mosque, temple, gurudwara or church with one or two shops is a center of religious and social activities. The village panchayats in India and village councils in other countries perform some administrative and judicial functions. In the socialist countries like Russia, Ukraine, Poland, North Korea and China, the village councils decide certain crops should be sown, irrigated or harvested. In the rural settlements where fishermen live, the main activity is fishing. The fishing villages are sited on rivers, lakes and sea coast, and the people look to the water rather than to the land to get their livelihood. Although the main occupation of these villages is fishing, this may be combined with some agricultural activity. There are numerous rural settlements in the forest areas in which the dominant economic activity is gathering of forest products and lumbering. Such villages are generally small in size and may be found in the taiga region, forest areas of the sub-Himalayan region and hilly tracts like northeast India. In the forest where lumbering is on a large scale and timber industry has developed, urban rather than rural settlements are more usual. The fishing, mining or lumbering villages are like agricultural settlements in which there are a few shops and some small scale administrative functions, but they differ from towns as do all villages in the relatively narrow range of their activities and their lack of commercial and industrial development. Pattern of settlement has been defined as the relationship between one house or building to another. The pattern of settlement may be easily identified by reading and observing a large scale map like that of the topographical maps prepared by the Survey of India or the Ordnance Survey of Britain. The term pattern of settlement deals with compact and semi-compact settlement only as each of the dispersed settlement has its own shape. The rural settlements have different shapes and sizes. The site of the village and the surrounding topography and the terrain influence the shape and size of a village. In fact, the pattern of rural settlement is the result of a series of adjustments to the environment which have been going on for centuries. The rural settlements may be broadly classified as 1. Rectangular pattern, 2. Linear pattern, 3. Circular and semicircular pattern, 4. Star-like pattern, 5. Triangular pattern and 6th one nebular pattern. Coming to rectangular pattern, over 50% of the world population lives in rural settlements and most of the people inhabit in settlements of rectangular pattern. Rectangular settlements mainly develop in productive alluvial plains and wide intermontane valleys. The lanes in the rectangular settlements are almost straight, meeting each other at right angles. The rural settlements of the Satluj-Ganga plains, especially those which developed on the crossroads, the well planned settlements of Germany, Russia, Central Asia, China, North and South Korea, Vietnam, Malaysia, Israel and France also fall under this category. Coming to linear pattern, in the linear settlements, houses are arranged along either side of a road, railway line, river or canal. Such settlement also evolve along the edge of a valley, especially in the mountainous areas above flood level or along the coast. The development of linear settlement in the hilly areas is largely controlled by terrain and topography. Along the river banks and the seashore, the flood and water level influence linear settlements. Such settlements are numerous in the middle Himalayas, Alps, Rockies Andes, Pyrenees, linear settlements houses are arranged along either side of a road, railway line, river or canal. Such settlement also evolve along the edge of a valley, especially in the mountainous areas above flood level and along the coast. Coming to circular and semicircular pattern, the fishermen and salt producers develop their settlements along the sea coast and salt lake respectively. Since the people prefer to stay near the water, they construct their houses along the coast. Such settlements acquire the circular or semicircular shapes. In the vicinity of crater lakes and on the levees of oxbow lakes, the main occupation of the people of circular settlement is to earn their livelihood from the water either by catching fish, water nuts, grasses or by providing services to the recreators, picnic goers and aesthetic beauty lovers. Coming to star-like patterns, the star-like settlements develop on the sites and places where several metalled or unmetalled roads coverage. In the star-shaped settlement, houses spread out along the sides of roads in all directions. This pattern is common to both villages and towns and is caused mostly by new development spreading out along the major roads. This type of settlement is the characteristic of the countrysides of northwest Europe, plains of Yangtze-Kiang, Punjab province of Pakistan and the Satluj-Yamuna plains of India. Coming to triangular pattern, triangular patterns of rural settlement generally develop at the confluence of rivers. The lateral expansion of houses at the confluence is constrained by the rivers. Consequently, the settlement acquires a triangular shape. Coming to nebular pattern, when the shape of a settlement resembles to nebula, it is known as a nebular settlement. The arrangement of roads is almost circular, which ends at the central location or the nucleus of the settlement. Generally, the size of nebular settlements is small and they develop around the house of the main landlord of the village or around the mosque, temple or church. There are several villages of this type in the Ganga Yamuna Doab. Most of the rural settlements, their shapes and sizes are the results of geo-historical and cultural factors. However, in the recent decades, attempts are being made to develop planned rural settlements. Examples of planned rural settlements in Australia, Israel, South Africa, Russia, Central Asian republics, Germany, Sweden and India, particularly in Gujarat and Rajasthan, are numerous. The carefully planned rural settlements have many socio-economic and environmental advantages. Some of the advantages of the planned settlements are: 1. In the planned rural settlement, the use of land is judiciously planned and only those crops are sown which may give higher agricultural returns. The settlements are planned to give each family a reasonably good income and the land is equitably distributed. 2. There are several economic advantages for the settlers themselves. They are ensured a steady income and they come to areas where basic services such as roads and electricity have already been provided. In unplanned settlements, this is like to be the case. Third one of the most important of well planned settlement is that they ensure that the land cleared is of a sufficiently good quality and that it is planted with the crops and social forestry best suited to the soil and slope characteristics of the area. In unplanned settlements, the land cleared might be infertile or easily eroded. The planned rural settlements are, however, not free from disadvantages. Some of the disadvantages of the planned rural settlements are: 1. In the early stages of planned settlements, the settlers have little freedom of action and the schemes do not provide an immediate solution of their problems as perhaps they thought they would. Some settlers become dissatisfied and leave the scheme, but most realize its long term advantages. 2. Settlements are planned for a given number of families based on the capacity of the land to support them at a given income. Naturally, when they have children, not all the young people will be able to live in the same areas. To overcome this problem, people will either have to move away from the area in future generations or will have to make the original settlement schemes the basis for trading and rural industries. If no alternative jobs are developed, land schemes will only postpone the drift to the towns for a generation instead of finding a permanent solution. 3. The cropping pattern adopted may not be useful in the long run. Generally, in planned rural settlements, cash crops are grown and most of such crops are soil exhaustive. The merits of diversification and rotation of crops which enhance the fertility of soils by fixing nitrogen will not be available. These demerits of planned rural settlements may be overcome by adopting flexible and pragmatic planning as the number of people increases. This is a concept of settlement geography. The concept that the size continuum of settlement from hamlet to city is reflected in a similar continuum of ways of life from at one pole a true rural community to at the other a distinctive urban society. In its most direct form, the concept suggests that the population size, density and environment of a settlement are the determinants of its societal type, and that the most meaningful description of a way of life to relate it to the settlement in which it occurs. The notion of the rural urban continuum evolved from the works of 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 on the social distinctiveness of the city. Societies at the rural end of the continuum are envisaged as being close knit, rigidly stratified, highly stable, integrated, homogeneous in composition. Urban societies are supposed to be loose in association, unstable in membership, characterized by great social mobility and with a tendency for inter-individual contacts to occur only in one situational context. For example, workplace, kinship, recreation, etc. Whereas, in rural societies, contact would occur in several different contexts. The continuum has been seen both as a classificatory device and as marking a process of social change. The view of the continuum as marking a process is criticized and discredited by the fact that social change can occur without any growth of settlement or increase in population. For example, through the replacement of an original rural population by commuters. More serious is the criticism that it is possible to find rural societies in urban settings and urban societies in villages. The association between settlement size and societal type is thus shown not to be perfect, although the continuum concept may still have some general validity. Alternatives have been suggested to the rural urban continuum as the most useful description of ways of life. The most interesting is the idea put forward by 𝗳𝗏 that within any area of population there are likely to be both nationally and locally oriented individuals and groups, with the balance varying from place to place. Such a framework facilitates the study of the effect of national developments on local social systems as occurred in dormitory villages and with tourism. The rural urban continuum has been supported by studies showing the existence of rural urban differences in such things as religious and political attitudes, the incidence of fertility control and social behavior. Such studies, however, confirm only a modified view of the continuum. The controlling factor on society often being the distance from urban centers of social diffusion or some aspect of occupation distinctiveness rather than settlement type as in the original settlement of the concept. Rural settlements have a much longer history of development than urban settlements, and so their human characteristics have a much deeper foundation. These characteristics include demography, way of life, intellectual outlook, environmental perception, aspects of behavior and sociological interaction are the direct results of man's long and involved relationship with his surrounding, and they represent the most natural and human conditions.